I'm really excited. We're in our Flourish series at the moment, which the whole premise of what we've been talking about recently, I might just get off to the side, that's what I did, thank you, is that God wants our lives to flourish. Not only does he want our lives to flourish, he's actually designed life in a certain way that there's certain principles and actions we can take to help flourish our lives, and I guess to partner with God's plan and purpose for our lives. We've been getting really practical. Has anyone been enjoying the Flourish series? I thought Geordie Howard's message last week was amazing about questions to ask yourself halfway through the year. Who was slightly maybe convicted by that message? Hopefully you were encouraged by that, just thinking, hey, we're actually past halfway through the year. He was telling me we're halfway through the year, and I'm thinking, actually, we're in July, like we're through this bad boy. But it was also really, really encouraging. And I'm hoping to continue that theme this evening. I want to first tell you about that maybe one of the dumbest things I have ever said. Is that okay? This is a safe space, right? This is a safe space. Who here has said something dumb before? Great, all of us. Gabe was like, nah, I never said anything dumb. I'd believe that. And so how do I even start? On one of the most important days of my life, the day I was to propose to my bride, we had a great day. I wanted to surprise her. We did all these special things. We went on a seaplane ride and a jet boat ride, and then we caught a water taxi over to this island at the Gold Coast because I wanted to propose as the sun set over the water, but we live on the eastern side of Australia, so it turns out that's difficult. So I thought, we'll go to an island, and then that way we'll be looking back, and it kind of worked. And it had been this beautiful day, and we're at the stage in our relationship where we'd already decided on a wedding date before we were actually engaged. We're like, that's when we're getting married, and I was like, all right, I've got this time frame to propose in. We'd chosen a ring, and for some reason, I thought, I really want this to be a surprise. Now, my wife is Talitha. If you know, she's very smart. At this point of the day, I think she's kind of worked out what's happening, right? Like, it's been all this beautiful romantic stuff, and we're walking down the beach, and Slater and one of my other friends had set up like a picnic with a channel of rose petals and a love heart around the picnic rug and flaming torches, and it was just going so well. And we're walking up the beach towards this, and something within me says, you've got to throw her off the scent. Like, and some people, you've already realized this is really dumb. So I thought what would be a good idea would be to tell her that, to throw her off the scent of me proposing. I just said, hey, your ring's sold out. And the reason it sold out was because I bought it, but I didn't tell her that. I just said, oh, hey, like, your ring's actually sold out. And before I could kind of get any more else out, I ascertained by the look on her face that this was not good news. To her, a wave of confusion, and I quickly realized I have stepped in it, that this was not a good call. And I kid you not, this is probably the moment that confirmed for me that I had made the right decision, or was about to make the right decision. Talitha said, I just need a minute. And I said, okay. And she kind of just went for a little wander up the beach. And she came back, and she was like, all right, let's keep going. And she said, and in that moment, she forgave me, and it was like nothing had ever happened. And I was like, I have made the correct choice here. Who knows, I nearly blew up the whole day with one stupid phrase. I nearly ruined all the planning and effort that went into it the day before to make this beautiful day happen. It was such a dumb thing. And in that moment, there was great tension. Now, obviously, we went on and I proposed, and it was beautiful, it was great, it was quite funny because we sat down at the picnic and I was like, oh, we'll snack. And, when you both know that something really significant's about to happen, it's funny how you don't have any appetite. We both kind of picked at some grapes and small talked about how beautiful the day was while I fumbled around. Slater had buried the ring under the picnic rug in the sand, so I'm just patting the rug trying to find, there it is, pulled it out, and it was great in the end. But for a few moments, there was some great tension and friction in our relationship. Now, for anyone here who has ever been around other people, you would probably relate to that feeling of tension in relationship or friction in relationship. We all relate to that thought, right? If you're around people, there's going to be tension, there is going to be friction, there will always be friction. The question is, how do we deal with that well? If I could put it this way, how do we have good conflict resolution? Who here has heard of the term conflict resolution? Hopefully you have. It's step one of learning how to resolve conflicts is knowing about conflict resolution. And that's what I actually want to speak about tonight, because I think that there's this tension in our life that a lot of us will live with. As followers of Jesus, it can be really hard to work out, how do I respond to tension and friction in my relationships? Because on one hand, I know I need to love people. I know I need to be kind to people. I know that I need to forgive people. But on the other hand, I don't just want to be a doormat, that anyone can walk over me, abuse me, say whatever they want to me. Has anyone ever struggled with that tension and that balance of, I need to love, I need to forgive, but also I can't just let people speak to me however they feel like speaking to me? Again, if we've ever been in any kind of relationship, we would have sensed friction. Whether it's with a co-worker, with family, with friends, potentially with your boss, even within church, wherever there are people, wherever there are relationships, there will always be friction and tension. And I really believe if we want to flourish in life, we have to learn how to deal with conflict well. Are you with me? Is everyone on board for something really practical about conflict resolution? Great. Matthew 5 verse 9, Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. When it comes to conflict resolution, I think this is our number one mandate as followers of Jesus. We are called to be peacemakers. Can I encourage us that peacemaking is often actually a process? What peacemaking is not just sweeping things under the rug so everything seems calm on the surface, just ignoring everything so everything is swell. Peacemaking actually involves addressing problems. There's actually a difference in the dictionary definition between peacekeeping and peacemaking. Peacekeeping is smoothing things out so they run smoothly. Peacemaking is addressing the root cause of issues so that there can be reconciliation and peace within relationships. Jesus is saying, be a peacemaker. Be the former. Don't just be someone who sweeps things under the rug and ignores things until they blow up. Be someone who addresses problems with the heart that there would be peace. Does that make sense? That is our motivation, is that there would be peace and reconciliation. And often, the kindest thing you can do is actually to have conflict. And not conflict as in, bare knuckle brawling in the church foyer, but to actually have the difficult conversation with someone so that there would be peace and reconciliation can be the most difficult, but the most kind thing you could ever do. Pastor Chris spoke amazingly kind of around this topic this morning. If you haven't heard that message, you should check it out online. He said, everyone wants to be in community, but not everyone knows how to act in community. Therefore, if we want a strong community, we actually have to help one another by pointing out when things are hurtful, when things don't belong, when things cause pain. We actually need to be peacemakers, not just sweeping those things aside. I love what James 3:17-18 says, and in the Message paraphrase, I love some of the aspects it brings out of it. It says, real wisdom, God's wisdom, begins with a holy life and is characterized by getting along with others. It is gentle and reasonable, overflowing with mercy and blessings, not hot one day and cold the next, not two-faced. You can develop a healthy, robust community that lives right with God and enjoy its results. Now, we all want that, right? I think as a church, we should all want that. I think we have got a really healthy community. It says you can develop a healthy, robust community that lives right with God and enjoy its results only, everyone say only, if you do the hard work, everyone say hard work, of getting along with each other, treating each other with dignity and honor. I love James. James is kind of like your uncle who just tells it how it is. It's like, you want good relationships, you want a good community, well, you better be ready for hard work. It's not always easy to get along. I'm sure if we did a raise of hands, we could all identify someone in our life that it's not that easy to get along with. Sometimes it's just difficult to get along with people. But James says this is of utmost important, that actually wisdom is characterized by getting along with other people. So the motivation behind conflict resolution, behind difficult conversations, has always got to be peace and reconciliation. Can I just lay this out right at the start? If any part of you in entering into a difficult conversation is driven by some kind of pride, that I want to prove that person wrong, I want to prove that I am right, I want to prove that I am justified, that that I am the one that is in the okay here, don't have that conflict. That is not the heart behind conflict resolution. That is not the heart behind peacemaking. It's not going to lead to a positive outcome. Peacemaking is not some kind of power move where I prove to you and everyone else that I am the one that is right. Peacemaking is, how can we be reconciled? How can peace return to our relationship? There's tension, there's friction. How can we return to a place of peace? The good news is, Jesus actually gives us a really great framework with how to approach conflict resolution. And we're going to work through that, and then I've got some just practical tips for how to do it. Does that sound good? All right, let's turn to Matthew 18, 15 to 17. This is just Jesus on conflict resolution. It says, if a fellow believer hurts you, go and tell him, work it out between the two of you. If he listens, you've made a friend. If he won't listen, take one or two others along so that in the presence of witnesses, will keep things honest and try again. If he still won't listen, tell the church. If he won't listen to the church, you have to start over from scratch, confront him with the need for repentance, and offer again God's forgiving love. Can I just encourage us? I think that if way more of the conflict in the world just followed these kind of simple steps, we would have a healthier world if this is how things got addressed. The first thing, if a fellow believer hurts you, go and tell him. Work it out between the two of you. Step number one in Jesus's conflict resolution strategy is fix it on a friend level first. Is talk to the person face to face. Talk to the person one-on-one. This seems so simple, but isn't it true that it so often happens in a different way? Often what happens is not I talk to the person who hurt me, it's I talk to someone else about how they hurt me to see if I'm justified in feeling hurt, and maybe to garner up some support for me and my cause that I find myself in. Jesus says, step one, talk to the person. Talk to the person one-on-one. And if my heart is reconciliation, the kindest thing I can do when I'm hurt is talk to that person about it. Now, this is not always easy, right? Some people are really good with conflict. Other people, like me, you're a people pleaser. And you would prefer to just ignore the fact that any conflict existed and let it boil up on the inside. Where are my people pleasers this evening? We're talking about conflict resolution. I can see a few faces being like, I'm really uncomfortable that step one is talk to the person about it. I'm really uncomfortable with that. I really wish step one was just forget and pretend everything's good, smile, and it will be okay. Fix it on a friend level. What it looks like is, because I love you, I actually need to talk to you about something. That's what conflict resolution looks like. Now, I would encourage you, if you're not sure of what to say, if you're not sure of how to address it, maybe it is a good time to talk to a life group leader or a pastor and say, look, this is the situation I find myself in. Can I have some wisdom on maybe how to address it? But in doing that, you don't need to name and shame and drag the other person through the mud. It's simply my heart for this person is to be reconciled, is to be back at peace. What wisdom do you have for me on how to go about this? Again, the opposite of this is gossip. It is to be talking about an issue behind someone's back. And I think why this is so destructive, why it's so important that we go to the person first, because if we go to other people, it does two things. It wrecks the reputation of that person by assassinating their character behind their back, and it actually wrecks your own reputation. To lower yourself to the point where you're talking negatively about someone else, it actually destroys your own character. You know what I've noticed and learned about people in life is how they talk about other people to me is most likely how they're talking about me to other people. Right? How people are talking about other people to me is often how they're talking about other people, talking to other people about me. I don't want to be that kind of person. I don't want to be the kind of person that people are afraid that I'm talking behind their backs. I would much prefer that people knew if there was an issue, I was going to talk to them about it. Because at the end of the day, we all love that, right? We would much rather know where we stood with people than be living in this vague, ambiguous, I think we're good, but I'm not sure. I think church is often a good example of this, and I've had a really good, I suppose, relationship with leaders as I've grown up in the church, where they have loved me enough to tell me the things that I need to hear. You know what I want to hear? I want to hear, good job. You're doing great. You're amazing. Everything's perfect. I just want to hear that all the time. But actually, that's not what I need to hear. I need to hear when I said something and it hurt someone. I need to hear when I didn't realize what my actions were communicating to someone. I actually need to hear that. The opposite is when on the outside, everything's a smile, everything's okay, but then behind everyone's back, there's talk going on. And really, that gossip has got no place in church community. No place. It's so destructive. It's so destructive to community because it destroys the chance of reconciliation. When I won't talk to you about it, but I'll talk to everyone else about it, it makes it very difficult for peace to return to our relationship. I think a good way to discern whether it's gossip or not is if you're not part of the problem and you're not part of the solution, then don't talk about it. That's gossip. If I'm not part of the problem and I'm not part of the solution, then why are we talking about this? And can I arm you with that language tonight? If someone's talking to you about something and you're realizing, I don't think I'm a part of the problem or the solution here, it's time to maybe shut that conversation down and go, look, I don't know if we should be talking about this person that way. Not part of the problem or the solution. And I would encourage you, if someone comes to you, and I guess I wanted to get this out here because I think we've all got a part to play in shutting this down, okay? Because gossip is so toxic. Talking about people behind their backs is so toxic. If someone comes to you with that kind of thing, can I encourage you, your first response is, have you talked to them about that? Such and such said this to me, and Jesse made my coffee a little bit too hot. It must be because he doesn't like me, wanted me to burn my tongue. The first question should be, have you talked to Jesse about that? And if my answer is no, then why are we talking about that? The encouragement is, well, you need to talk to Levi, you need to talk to Jesse about that. And we'll talk about it after. No, Jesse hasn't done that. Because if you're not part of the problem and solution, you shouldn't be talking about it. And I want to encourage you, when we talk face to face, when we go to it on a friend level, can I encourage you, you'll probably be surprised with how often it actually goes quite well. Like often we can go and worst case scenario, this is going to blow apart, this is not going to work. You know the amount of conversations I have with people where I think, oh, maybe this isn't going to go well, and I walk away going, gee, that went so much better than I expected. Most likely, if that person has really heard you and listened to you, they're going to say, I'm really sorry, I didn't realize I hurt you. How can we move back to a place of peace? True friends are brave enough to have difficult conversations. I've spent a bit of time on that point because I think that's where the majority of problems should be solved, right? Face to face. Not talking to other people, face to face. If we all just determine to settle things face to face, I think we are going to be a big step in the direction of having healthy relationships. What if that doesn't work? What if they don't hear me? What if they don't listen to me? What if they're so busy saying their thing back that I can't get my point across? Well, Jesus says the next thing, take one or two people along so that in the presence of witnesses, it will keep things honest. Maybe the second step in conflict resolution is to involve a mediator. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about a professional mediator. I really struggled to find a word for this because saying involve a mediator kind of sounds like, I don't know, you dial up Michael's mediation services and he like rocks up and he sits down and he's got like a little briefcase or something. A mediator is simply a third party who's impartial, who's equally invested in both of you, somebody who is completely neutral to the situation to keep the conversation honest. Someone who can pass between both parties as an equal friend to both. In a church context, it could be someone like a life group leader, someone who's not going to take sides, someone who can sit and hear and facilitate the conversation. And obviously, don't just rock up with a surprise mediator. That's not a good way to do it, okay? If I got conflict with someone, I'm not going to rock up and be like, hey, I've got Michael's mediation services here with me. We're going to talk. No, it's, hey, would you mind if we ask, who would you be comfortable with sitting in this conversation just to make sure that we can both hear one another? Ask them if they're willing. This person could sit in our conversation, mediate maybe the conversation, ensure that both people are able to explain their feeling and their positions clearly. Because sometimes when we sit down one-on-one, it can be a bit intense, right? The emotions start to rise. It can be good to have a third person who's sitting there and is able to say, okay, so is this what you're saying? This is what I'm hearing is the problem from you. What's the response from you? So involve a mediator. The third thing Jesus says is take to the church, which is taking it to a leader. Again, take it to someone whose heart is really for reconciliation. Potentially they might be able to have the conversation on your heart. Have the conversation on your behalf. In a workplace, that's probably when you go to your boss. Don't go to your boss with straight away, hey, this person said something and it really hurt me, when you haven't actually even said face to face to that person that they said something that hurt you. But if you try to have the conversation, it's not successful. Maybe get a mediator involved. It's not successful. That's when you take it to the next level. The fourth thing Jesus says is to forgive. Now, forgiving should be every step along the way. We should be fighting to forgive right from the start. But Jesus is making it real clear, even if they don't listen after you've done it all so well, what's our response? Our response is forgiveness. Actually, in other translations, it puts it, treat them like a tax collector or a Gentile. What that means is back to step one of loving them. Recognize I'm not even trying to address this on a faith level anymore. I will love this person. I will extend grace to them. I'm going to actually guard my heart, because that's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is guarding my own heart. I'm not going to let offense creep in. I'm not going to stay sitting and dwelling in unforgiveness, letting that thing rot away inside of me. I'm going to release them from my judgment. What I would encourage us is that when it gets to that step, sometimes what our relationship looks like might need to change. But I'm going to release them from my judgment. Okay? I'm not going to hold that against them anymore. If someone breaks your trust and they're not repentive, of course forgive, but maybe don't trust them straight away, if I can put it that bluntly. Forgiveness and trust are two different things. Don't feel like someone who hurt you need to trust again because you've forgiven them. No, I can forgive them, but also maybe I'm not going to totally trust them until they've proven they're trustworthy. Is that okay? I'm going to give us 5 real quick tips on how to do this well. So the 4 steps: talk to them face to face, involve a mediator, take it to a leader, forgive. How do we do that? Well, I think the first thing is to assume the best. If we're going to have a difficult conversation with someone, let's be people who assume the best. Pastor Chris said again this morning, when we aren't sure, we should let grace fill the gaps. I'm not sure of their motive. I'm not sure of why they said that. Instead of making up a story in my head or overthinking it, I'm going to assume the best. Maybe they didn't realize that was going to be hurtful. Maybe they were tired. Maybe they were sick. Maybe there was something going on behind the scenes that I couldn't see. It can be so easy to assume the worst, but I really think that we should assume the best. And when we have that difficult conversation, I think it's important that we're always motivated by care. That's like almost our first question is, are you okay? Because how you acted doesn't make sense to me. It maybe not saying that to that person's face, but it's like something doesn't add up here. So the first question has got to be, are you okay? We all would have heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. And it doesn't necessarily excuse what was done, but sometimes it can help give us context with how we should respond. I remember somebody who was doing something ages ago that was really frustrating me. And I found myself in that, guessing their motives and getting really frustrated. And I sat down and had the conversation with them. And I asked, look, is everything okay? And it just was like a waterfall, like a dam burst of all this stuff that had been going on at home and all this really difficult things that this person was dealing with. And I realized, hang on, this isn't about me at all. This person's really in some pain and they need help. And that was able to help how I address the problem. Instead of coming in and just smashing it, it was like, no, I'm going to approach this with love and with grace. I need to get my point across that, hey, that behavior is actually hurtful to me. But my concern is helping you to move forward. Assume the best. The first choice, and I think our first choice, honestly, when we're hurt, is to cover that with love. Sometimes an offense is minor, or it wasn't intentional, it was a one-off, and escalating that's not actually the most helpful approach. Honestly, the best way to maybe for some of us, we need to have a bit of a filter with when's it time to have a one-on-one. If someone just out of the blue says something that we find a bit uncomfortable, the first question is, can I just let that go and forgive? And just assume that person didn't mean that. They didn't realize, let's not be a part of this generational thing, which is I have a right to be offended at everything. It's like, no, we've actually got to show a bit of love and grace to people. Like that, maybe that person was tired, but at the end of the day, if I have to talk to them about it, then I've got to assume the best. I've got to go in with care. The second thought is to sail towards the storm. When it comes to conflict resolution, sometimes the best thing we can do is sail towards the storm. If it's something you can't just let slide, you have to have the difficult conversation. I really like this picture of sailing towards the storm. If you've ever seen a boat go into a wave or a surfboard go into a wave, if it's pointing at the wave, usually it gets through. When it's guaranteed to not get through is when it's side on to the wave. Has anyone ever been on a surfboard and you've been caught side on to a big bit of white water and you just end up getting dumped and it's no fun for anyone involved? I think conflict resolution can be a bit like this. Sometimes we can see a storm brewing. Something's been happening. That looks like a difficult conversation. That looks uncomfortable. I don't want to address that. I don't want to talk about that. So I might just try skirt around the outside of it and hope that it fixes itself. 9 times out of 10, you end up just getting broadsided with something you didn't expect when you should have actually sailed towards the storm. If you can't, just let it go. Don't allow it to fester and become bitterness. Sail towards the storm. If you need to speak to them, again, a few seconds of bravery. Hey, I need to have a chat to you about something, can go a long way in solving conflict well. And I think you need to speak to them. If you can't shake thinking about it, if it keeps happening, if you're finding it difficult not to talk to other people about, it's probably a sign that you need to have a conversation with that person. Is this okay? Third thing, listen to understand, not to reply. I find this point extremely confronting and convicting. Listen to understand, not to reply. I don't know if you've ever been listening to someone and what you find yourself doing is making up a great rebuttal for what that person is saying. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm working this out. I'm hearing what they're saying and I'm picking apart their argument in my head. If you're doing that, if you catch yourself thinking about how to reply while they're speaking, you're actually not listening. You stopped listening when you started formulating your response. We have to be humble enough to try and understand what that person is saying. There's a great thing called active listening, which is where I repeat to that person what they've just said to clarify that I understand before I respond. So, okay, is this what you're saying? Is this what you feel like the issue is? Let's clarify that before we start having an argument about things that don't even exist. This takes a lot of humility. Again, it takes coming into the conversation, being like, I'm not here to be right. I'm here for reconciliation. I'm not here to prove a point. I'm here so that there can be peace. James 3:17 puts it this way: the wisdom that's from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. The one that stood out to me in there is that wisdom from God is open to reason. When I read that, I was like, no, wisdom is being right? Like if I've got a really wise response, that means like I've got the best response, right? Is it just me that thought that? And then it's like, hang on, no, wisdom's actually being open to reason. Wisdom is going in and being humble enough to hear that maybe I misunderstood and maybe I wasn't right and maybe I'm the one who needs to apologize. Wisdom is being open to godly wisdom, to good reason. So listen to understand, not to reply. Number 4, avoid absolutes. Stick to the facts. If you're addressing something with someone, if you're having a conversation, avoid absolutes. Absolutes are you always or you never. Any of the married people here, you would know that this will get you in trouble if you resort to absolutes. If I get accused of never taking the bin out, all I have to do is think of one time that I took the bin out and now it's a justice issue. Now it's unjust that you would accuse me of never taking the bin out. As a matter of fact, I've taken it out at least 3 times in the last 10 years of our marriage. So this is now unfair. The best thing to do is to avoid absolutes. You always make me feel this way. You never care about me. You never pay attention to me. We've got to avoid absolutes, stick to the facts. Hey, the other night, it just seemed like you just kept walking. For the last few weeks, you've been like not paying any attention to me. It feels like you're just walking past me and not saying hello. And it's making me feel a little bit like you don't care about me. No, you never pay any attention to me. I know that there's just a couple of specific times that I would like to talk about because I would like to understand more. Is that okay? Avoid absolutes, stick to the facts. Number 5, stay calm. He who loses it, loses it. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how right you are, how wronged you've been. If you lose your temper, you have lost the argument. You've lost the conflict if you lose your temper. If you can't control your emotion, you default lose the conversation. Ephesians 4:2 says, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. If that means that you have to postpone the difficult conversation, postpone it. It's actually okay, and can I give us some permission to do this? It's okay to come back and say, hey, I was thinking about what you said and I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. I know for me, sometimes I feel like I've missed the moment, like in a conversation, something happens and I feel like, I go away thinking I should have said something about that, but now I can't say anything because the moment's passed. It's actually okay to go back and to say, hey, I've just been thinking about what happened the other night and I wanted to talk about it. Can I just give us permission to do that? That's okay. Final one is forgive. Again, forgive. The most important element, I think, of Christ-centered conflict resolution is forgiveness. Really holding on to offense, it's like trying to swim holding on to concrete blocks. It's only going to pull you down. And what I think forgiveness is, like I said before, forgiveness is building the bridge as far as I can. I'll build the bridge all the way to the other side. I can't force that person to get on it, but at the end of the day, I will do all that I can that there would be reconciliation. And I think for some of us tonight, maybe it's an opportunity tonight to choose to forgive again. Maybe you've been hurt during some kind of conflict. Maybe it was something that was unaddressed. Something happened that offended and hurt you. And can I encourage you, for the sake of your own freedom in your heart, that maybe it's time to forgive. Again, forgiveness does not mean saying that what happened is okay. It's not saying that what that person did was okay. It's not saying that I necessarily trust that person again. What it is saying is I'm not going to allow myself to hold on to that anymore. I'm going to release that person from my judgment. Sometimes it's an ongoing process, right? Anyone who's worked through forgiveness can choose to forgive, and then the next day you might need to choose to forgive again. But can I encourage us, the most important step in conflict resolution is actually forgiveness. And I think we picture this, we see this pictured so well in Jesus, who our behaviors had separated us from God, came and built the bridge the whole way. That's the message to you tonight, is that Jesus has actually bridged the gap. Our decision is whether or not we want to step onto that bridge, is whether or not we want to go on that journey with him. But ultimately, Jesus is actually saying, hey, look, we're all good. If you would step on this bridge, I'd love to lead you into a life of freedom, into a life of flourishing, into a life of wholeness, into a life full of hope. But at the end of the day, that's your decision. Would you stand with me this evening just as we wrap up? I just got 2 questions for us. If we just close our eyes, maybe just reflect on our life for a moment. The first question is there a difficult conversation that I need to have? Is there a difficult conversation I need to have? Maybe something's just been, it's been eating you up. Maybe there's been awkwardness or tension in a relationship, and it's actually time to have that difficult conversation. Can I encourage you, maybe even now, just make a decision as to what you're going to do next. Either it's to talk to that person, or maybe it is to get some wisdom about how to address it well if you're not sure how to address it. But I can encourage you, sail towards the storm if there's a difficult conversation you need to have. And the second question is there anyone I need to forgive? Maybe there was tension somewhere in the past, there was some friction, something caused pain. Maybe you tried to work through it. Maybe it's just been a long time. And actually, for the sake of your own heart, you need to forgive. You need to stop holding on to that. It might just be this heavy weight, like you've been trying to tread water holding onto bricks or something like that. And it's actually time to forgive. I think it'd be good if we all just kind of think through. There's probably a face there. Can I encourage you that forgiveness does start with a decision? It doesn't start with a feeling. You never feel like forgiving someone. It starts with a decision. Tonight, I choose to forgive that person. I choose to release them from my judgment. I'm not saying it was okay. I'm not saying they were right. But what I am saying is I'm not going to hold that against that person anymore. I just really have a sense that for a few people, as you make that decision tonight, you're actually going to walk out of here like a weight has lifted off your shoulders. You don't even realize how heavy it's been. And even as you're thinking through it now, I just feel like there's a sense that there's a weight coming off your shoulders as you choose to forgive, to release someone from your judgment. And Jesus, I just thank you that you want to help us with this stuff. Thank you, God, that you give us the wisdom to be peacemakers, to address stuff and to fix the root cause of conflicts. You give us wisdom for that. And God, I just pray for the strength to forgive this evening as we choose to release people from our judgment. I pray that you give us strength to make that decision. And I just pray for an overwhelming sense of freedom in people's lives as they release people, as they let go of offense, that you would fill them with peace and hope. In Jesus' name, amen.